And hello, everyone. Good evening, I guess. I'm Chimoge, and this is Chimoge's Comments America. Welcome to this live stream, both the people who are here right now and the people who will be watching this in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and share the stream. And also, please subscribe to the channel so that you can see more of my content. I do this every week on this channel. And I'm gonna wait a bit before starting to give more people a chance to come on the live stream. So I'm gonna wait either 4 minutes or until I get 4 likes on the live stream, whichever comes first. So I'll just be chilling here until then. Okay. Okay, it's been 4 minutes since I said I'd give myself 4 minutes, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start. Again, thank you so much, everyone who's here on the live stream tonight, and thank you to everyone who's going to be watching this in the future. So again, please like and share this video, and also subscribe. going to go ahead and begin. So as you can all tell from the title and the thumbnail, tonight I'm going to be talking about U.S. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and Christian nationalism. And by the way, these live streams, my aim is to always have them start at 7 p.m. Eastern time. However, obviously tonight that didn't happen. It's quite a bit later. My apologies for that. You know, just sometimes things happen that's how it turned out today. I'm gonna try and make this as quick as possible, just because I don't want to keep you all too long, and I also do want to get to bed at a somewhat, at a somewhat reasonable hour myself. But every week, 7 p.m. Eastern time, generally that's when on Sundays, that's when I'm going to be doing these live streams on these channels. So please always tune in around then. And, if ever you're here at 7 p.m. Eastern time and, you don't see the live has started yet, just keep checking and, eventually it'll be up, I promise. But anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene. So recently, within the last couple weeks or so, because today's the 7th. So a little over a week ago, Marjorie Taylor Greene made a stir with some comments she made at a Republican, some sort of conservative convention. I believe it was a Turning Point USA convention or event. And for those of you who don't know, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a Republican congresswoman who represents a district in Georgia. And she's very prominent and very polarizing because she is a staunch advocate of I guess alt-right and far-right. Those are really the same thing, but alt-right and far-right positions and policies, and is a leading figure in the general alt-right movement. Because of that, she's become very prominent. So anyway, I'm going to share my screen. I'm trying to read a little bit of my first article I'm going to be referencing here. I've also put it in the live chat for those of you who can see the live chat. And I'll put in the description of this video after the live stream ends. But let me just share my screen. Let's do this. Okay. Okay, I know it can look a little funny when I share my screen. I apologize. It does look a little funny when you only have one monitor, as I do. In the future, I want to try and get a second monitor, see if I can make it look a little better when I share my screen. But for now, this is what it is. So anyway, hope you all can see this. Yeah, I think y'all can see that, right? Let me know. Okay, I got I'm watching on my phone here to make sure it looks nice. Yeah, all right, y'all can see it. So anyway, what is Christian nationalism and what is its history in the U.S.? In fact, there's a little clip here, Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking. I think I'm just going to go ahead and play that. I hope you all can hear. Can you all hear that? Oh, sorry. I got it on mute. All right, there we go.
I'm a Christian. How many Christians do we have here? So you see, I also call myself a Christian nationalist. And that's not a bad word. That's actually a good thing, right? And there's nothing wrong with leading with your faith, because we should lead with our faith. Because if we're doing that, then we're doing the right thing. Doesn't mean we're perfect. It just means we're doing the right thing. And I think that's what the Republican Party needs to be about.
Okay. So there you've heard it. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
You're so fat. Brendan, you're not fat. It's the
All right. Sorry about that. So there you've heard it. Marjorie Taylor Greene they're describing herself as a Christian nationalist. In that clip, let's read this article a bit to get a better idea of what that means. What is Christian nationalism and what is its history in the US? So, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Georgia Republican, and other conservatives have called on Americans to embrace Christian nationalism in recent days, drawing intense backlash from some fellow Christians and non religious individuals alike. In Saturday remarks to the conservative Turning Point USA Action Summit in Florida, Greene argued that Christian nationalism is a quote unquote a good thing. That's not a bad word, the GOP congresswoman said. That's actually a good thing. There's nothing wrong with leading with your faith. If we do not live our lives and vote like we are nationalists, caring about our country and putting our country first and wanting that to be the focus of our federal government, if we do not lead that way, then we will not be able to fix it. Okay. And then I don't want to literally read the whole article word by word. I just want to pick out key sections. But again, I've linked to it. You all can check out the whole thing if you want. I would recommend it for anyone who's not already familiar with this topic. But let's go down to this section where it explains what Christian nationalism is. This little section I skipped over, just talking about how various people criticized her for that. They compared her to certain controversial groups that, I don't want to name lest the stream get taken down. I think that might happen. Anyway, Christian nationalism is the belief that the American nation is defined by Christianity and that the government should take active steps to keep it that way. Popularly, Christian nationalists assert that America is and must remain a quote unquote Christian nation, not merely as an observation about American history, but as a prescriptive program for what America must continue to be in the future. Dr. Paul D. Miller, professor of the practice of international affairs and co-chair for global politics and security at Georgetown University, explained in a 2021 article for Christianity Today. Christian nationalists, quote unquote, believe that Christianity should enjoy a privileged position in the public square, Miller wrote. Such an ideology has been touted by many right-wing supporters of former President Donald Trump and was openly on display during the January 6, 2021 attack against the U.S. Capitol. Okay, so I think those are the key ideas I wanted to get from that article. Let me stop sharing my screen for a second. Okay, so why am I bringing this up? The main reason I'm bringing it up is because Marjorie Taylor Greene's identification as a Christian nationalist is counterproductive to her aims. And because of that, that's ultimately going to cause a lot of problems for people who live in America as a whole, whether they be white or any other race. So what do I mean when I say all that? Now, the U.S. politics is commonly said to be, a fight between people who believe different things, between different ideologies, the liberals and the conservatives. However, that is not really true. American politics is white tribal warfare. In other words, these different political factions that we think don't like each other because they have different ideologies really don't like each other because they have different ancestors. You see, there's a lot of nonsense floating around in the world today, which says that the concept of race is not real. The term social construct is thrown around a lot. But that's not true. And if you go around believing that, you're going to completely miss what's going on in US politics, right? You're going to completely miss what's going on, what has been going on in the US since its foundation. You're going to completely miss what the US is all about. What do I mean by this? In the United States of America, because again, let's take it back even further than that. So you have, um, you have a group of, so you have life on planet Earth, right? And I know some of you all are gonna really laugh at this, like, oh, he took it back to the Big Bang, ha ha ha. But really, this does go way back. So you have life on planet Earth, and obviously you have animals and various species. Within the group of organisms called animals, right? They all have a common ancestry that distinguishes them from plants and bacteria and all that. But anyway, among the animals, eventually there evolved a group of animals that Western scientists refer to as hominids, right? So these hominids are primates. You guys know what primates are, I'm sure you do. That walk on two legs, and you know, um, and within that group called hominids, there eventually arose a species called Homo sapiens, and this is the so-called species of organism that is most commonly referred to as human beings today. However, I would argue that really all hominids could be referred to as human beings. Why is that? Because you see, Homo sapiens, pure blooded Homo sapiens, are what we would today refer to as Black people. In other words, a Black person who does not have any non Black ancestry is a pure Homo sapien. So then you might ask, where did these other groups of people that are not Black, like white people, East Asians, West Asians, so on and so forth, come from? Well, they came from when some Homo sapiens, some Black people mixed in with some other hominids that were not Homo sapiens, right? So I think the most common one that people have heard about are Neanderthals. And I should add the caveat that some people say that Neanderthals were also Homo sapiens. They're just a different subspecies. It's common to refer to, um, you know, I guess the biggest group of human beings, so-called modern human beings, as Homo sapiens sapiens, and then the Neanderthals were Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, right? And by the way, if any of y'all are, getting freaked out by all this Greek and Latin, I'm saying I apologize. This is not the only way to describe what I'm saying. This is just how, Western scientists have decided to describe these people. And, because I'm speaking English, and, these are the terms that most people who are familiar with these things are most familiar with. That's just what I'm using. I am looking into this stuff. I am kind of looking for, um, better, maybe clearer ways to describe this my own way, but this is just what I'm using now. But anyway, I say all that to say, long story short, all hominids, I say, can be referred to as humans. You had one strain of humans, the so-called Homo sapiens, that came out of Africa. They're dark-skinned, broad-nosed, nappy hair. These are what we today refer to as Black people. Some of them mixed in with another group of humans of a different so-called species, and then produced a new lineage of hominids, a new lineage of human beings that were a mixture between two human species, the Homo sapiens and, the Neanderthals, and maybe there were some other non-Homo sapien species in there as well. But without going too far into that, the point is, those people that were created from that mixture were called Eurasians, right? Because that mixture happened in Eurasia, right? And among the Eurasians, there were various tribes, right? One of those tribes, are what we now refer to as white people. But you see, when it comes to lineage, because again, this thing, this phenomenon I'm talking about, it has many names in English. We call it race, we call it tribe, we call it lineage, right? We call it nation. I'm going to get to that term in a bit. We call it all sorts of things. We even call it clan, we call it family. And while we tend to use, certain terms in some contexts than other, really they're all referring to the same thing. And what that is really like the continuum of ancestry, right? Who you come from, who's your father and your father's father and your father's father, who's your mother and your mother's mother and your mother's mother, and so on and so forth. That is what we're referring to with all these terms. It's not a social construct, it's a basic fact of life. So anyway, why am I bringing all this up in relation to Marjorie Taylor Greene and Christian nationalism? Well, among that tribe of Eurasians, among that race of Eurasians that we refer to as white people, they have their own sub tribes and sub races within them, like any race, like any lineage, right? So over time, these people all fought with each other, right, over tens of thousands of years. And eventually, some of them moved from Britain to North America and colonized it, right? They wiped out the Native Americans that were already living there and formed their own settlements, right? And the first people to do this was a certain aristocratic tribe from England called the Puritans, right? We learn about the Puritans in school. We think maybe they're just a funny group with funny clothing. Not quite. They actually all had a common ancestry, at least for the most part, probably even completely, right? The point is, they were a tribe with a common ancestry, generally common culture, and they had common interests, right? Then you had various other groups that also came to America from Britain later, and these groups would all kind of fight with the Puritans and fight with each other in the early British colonies in the Americas. But I think the most key one to understand for our discussion today are the people that they don't often get commonly referred to with a name that's technically correct. They get referred to with misnomers, and we don't always acknowledge them as an actual lineage of people the same way we do with, say, Black people, Asians in this country, that kind of thing. But they are their own unique lineage, and these are the people that you might hear referred to as the Scots Irish, right? You might also hear them broadly referred to as hillbillies, right? Now, Scots Irish is a misnomer, and hillbillies is kind of pejorative. But I've seen some sources that have made up names for them because there isn't a commonly used correct one. But for the purposes of just understanding, for the rest of this video, even though it's a misnomer, I'm just gonna refer to them as the Scots Irish, right? So anyway, these people been locked in a war with the Puritans since the the colonial era, and basically every other group that has come to America, Irish, Italian, German, etc., they've all individuals from those groups, and sometimes those groups as a whole for the most part, have sided with one or the other based on whatever they thought their interest was, which part of the country they settled in, etc. Because the Puritans settled in New England, whereas the Scots Irish settled in the American South, right? So two different tribes settled in two different regions of America. So then these people are in conflict, right? Um, sorry, just taking a look at my notes here, right? So these people are in conflict, right? So this conflict continues today because today your liberals are dominated by the Puritans, right? Whereas your the Republican Party, there's really two different main factions in the Republican Party now on the right, but the Scots Irish are one of the main ones, right? The Scots Irish and their allies are one of the main ones, and they're specifically part of the alt-right Trump white nationalist wing. And their goal, because the Puritans, they're aristocratic, they had more money and institutional access than the Scots Irish, even back in England, and that carried over to the United States. So, excuse me, they've been oppressing the Scots Irish um, since the Scots Irish got here. Hundreds of years of oppression, right? Just like they've actually been oppressing every other white tribe that's come, right? Some more than others, but they've been oppressing them all, right? So basically, when you see the alt right, right, when you see the white nationalists, then, and by the way, that terming them white nationalists is not, it's not wrong, but it's not specific enough, because these white liberals, these Puritans, they're also white nationalists. They're just promoting a different brand of white nationalism. But anyway, I'll go deeper into that in another video another time. But long story short, what they're really trying to do is gain their independence from the Puritans, from these higher tribe whites. That's also another way I refer to them, because they've created a tribal hierarchy within the white race, with them on the top, various other groups on the bottom, right? So, in other words, this conflict between the so-called left and the so-called right, this conflict between the higher tribe whites and the lower tribe whites, this conflict between the Puritans and the Scots Irish and their allies is fundamentally about lineage. It's fundamentally about ancestry, right? So if the people on the alt-right, these lower tribe whites, want to succeed in this conflict, they have to properly define and name what the conflict is. They have to be clear on why it's happening, why they're fighting, and who they are. So in other words, they should identify based on their specific lineage, right? But if you call yourself a Christian nationalist, that's not doing that, because Christian is not a lineage. Christian is an ideology. And before I go further, I know a lot of you are probably wondering, okay, why is this black guy on here talking so much about what white people are doing? Why is he advocating for white people to, um, you know, advocate for themselves based on their lineage? Is he a Herman Cain? Is he a Candace Owens? Well, what's going on here? None of that's going on. I'm not a Republican. I'm not voting Republican. I'm certainly not on the alt-right. I'm under no illusions. All of these people do not like black people. You know, they're not our allies. You know, I'm very clear about that. These people are not people at the moment, at this moment in history, who have my best interest in mind. But the reason I'm talking about this, well, it's two reasons really. One reason is that, you know, I'm a good guy. I care about all people, even the ones who don't mean me well, right? I want them to be their best selves. But two, the other reason I'm talking about this is because when white people are sick, when white people are not doing well, they're gonna end up wiling out on black people. You know, there's a saying, I forget who said it, but a very famous saying that when white America, um, something to the effect of, when white America has a cold, black America has pneumonia, essentially saying that whenever they're doing bad, we end up doing worse, right? And because of that, I know that if, the white people in this country are discontent, if they are angry, if they are spiritually disconnected, if they are suffering amongst themselves, they're just going to end up lashing out at us. In fact, if you take it to a deeper level, in order to oppress the entire world, white people have had to really damage themselves deeply. And in turn, the damage they have caused themselves has caused them to further hurt other people. It's just a mass scale demonstration of the saying that hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. All right, that's what it is. So, big part of why I'm talking about this is because if I could, you know, somehow convince white people to do what is genuinely in their own interest, like fixing their own cultural problems, it'll make it a lot more difficult and a lot less likely um, for them to hurt black people. Just that simple. And again, I want to focus a little more on the Marjorie Taylor Greene case study, you could call it, in this live. So I'm not going to go too like deep into the weeds of that. I've gone a bit deep, but there's a lot more to it. But I'm going to explain that idea in full in some other future videos. It probably won't even be a live streams. I think some lectures and video essays where I'll go into that. But also over the course of some other live streams, I'll probably throw some stuff in. But say all that to say, I'm not going to lay all that out in this video, but I just wanted to give you all an idea of where I'm coming from, right? So anyway, right, this Christian nationalism is counterproductive to Marjorie Taylor Greene's aim and the aims of people who think like her. Because the reason I'm using her as a case study is because she's representative of what a lot of other white people, white nationalists, lower tribe whites, white people on the alt-right are thinking and how they think, right? And how they're moving, right? That's what I'm talking about. So calling herself a Christian nationalist is against her interest, because Christian is not a lineage, but she's in a lineage-based fight, right? It's kind of like if I don't want to throw out a quick analogy. I'm tired. I don't know how good it will be, but yeah, if you're in a lineage-based fight, you have to define your group based off of your actual lineage, right? Because if you never figure out why you're getting attacked, you'll never properly form a defense, right? Then I think another thing is, if you go down to it on a deeper level, the very idea of Christian nationalism is an oxymoron, right? And actually, before I get into that, also I'll get into that first. Yeah, I'll say that before, because also the thing is, Christianity is not specific to the lower tribe whites, right? There are Christians who are liberal, there are Christians who are Puritans, there are Christians who are higher tribe whites. Now, it's true that a larger percentage of lower tribe whites, of Scots Irish and their allies, are Christian than the other side, but it's not 100%. They're not mutually exclusive. So even if you define yourself as a Christian, well, then you've included some of your enemy in that. And then also, it must be noted that obviously there are a lot of Christians that aren't white. But the thing about Christian nationalism is that In case you haven't already guessed it. Um, that it's that ideology and that movement assumes that, you know, real Christians are white. They're not talking about black Christians, Asian Christians, whatever. They're talking about white Christians, right? And when I go into the history a bit, it'll be pretty clear why they're doing that. But you know, if you're a black Christian, don't go around calling yourself a Christian nationalist thinking that's in your interest. It's absolutely not. Those people, they don't want you around at all. But anyway, other thing I wanted to get into is that the term Christian nationalism itself is an oxymoron because the root of the word nationalism is nation. And what is nation? If you look up the definition for nation and you look up the way nation has been used historically, it's another synonym for race. It's another synonym for that very phenomenon I was talking about earlier: race, tribe, lineage, clan, family. It's just another synonym for that. So ultimately, a nation is a group of people with a common lineage, right? So if you're going to be engaging in nationalism, and there have been many, nationalism has been defined in at least slightly different ways by people throughout the years. And I think certain people disagree about how to define it from what I've seen. But based off of my knowledge of the phenomenon overall historically, and other definitions I've heard, I think the definition of nationalism that makes the most sense is essentially, you know, a situation where people of a common lineage control their resources and their creations. That's basically what it is, right? Their physical resources, it should be said, and their creations, right? Because there is also a phenomenon that goes hand in hand with nationalism, whereby people kind of control their, I guess, and direct their non-physical resources, what you could call the culture. But you know that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, right? So if you are going to be engaging in nationalism, right, you have to be engaging with it on the basis of lineage, right? But then Christianity is not a lineage. So you can't have Christian nationalism. That's an oxymoron. Again, more confusion, right? But then if we take it onto a deeper level, the next thing I want to talk about, Marjorie Taylor Greene and other white people like her defining themselves as Christian nationalism is counterproductive to their aims because Christianity historically has been used as a weapon against the very lineage and lineages they're trying to defend. Because when you look at the history of Christianity, right? Because first of all, right, there every lineage on earth, well, okay, not every lineage, but the let's say the lineages, most of the lineages on earth, right? Most of the lineages on earth, and certainly the lineages of these lower tribe whites are older than Christianity, right? Because Christianity, you know, the raw materials for Christianity, I guess the spiritual science behind it, that's been around forever. But then, you know, some movements that were similar to Christianity, you know, began to be formed about 2,000 years ago, right? Obviously, you know, around the time of Yeshua of Nazareth, right? Then after he died for a couple hundred years, there were a lot of spiritual movements and groups that were similar, but none of them could, in my opinion, actually at that point be accurately described as Christianity. But when you really get Christianity, is at the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century CE. So that's the 300s. And let's look up what sorry, let's look up the exact date of the let's look at the exact date of the Council of Nicaea. Council of Nicaea. First Council of Nicaea, that's AD 325, right? So that's a little under 1700 years ago, right? Where you have that. Okay, just wanted to look that up real quick. So at that point in 325 AD, the Roman Empire, and keep in mind the Romans are one tribe of what we now refer to today as Italians, right? They founded the city of Rome, and then they just took over large swaths of Europe and the Mediterranean region, right? So that's the, again, tribe of people, tribe of white people who founded Rome and the Roman Empire. And they were the ones who called the Council of Nicaea, and they put together certain texts to create the Bible. And then they also decided on which spiritual ideas to make doctrine, which to exclude. And they put all that together. They came up with certain stories, about a character. They It was based on Yeshua of Nazareth, but was not the same person, right? This is what people call Jesus. That's, I know I'm going to be rocking the boat here for a lot of people, but Jesus is a fictional character based on Yeshua of Nazareth, but they're actually two different people, right? But anyway, um, they come up with Christianity, and they use Christianity as a tool to maintain their conquest and actually to even further their conquest, right? Because even after the formal collapse of the Roman Empire, through Christianity, specifically through the Roman Catholic Church, they were able to maintain influence throughout Europe and then eventually beyond. And even today, the Roman Catholic Church is the second biggest landowner in the world. And then on top of that, various Christian offshoots of the Roman Catholic Church came about. And, they all warred against each other in various things. And you got the situation you have today where there are all these different sects. But the point is, right, that before the Romans Christianized these other, white groups like the Celts, the Germanic peoples, the Slavs, right? And these white groups who are doing the fighting now, right? Including, ironically, um, the higher tribe whites who descended from these people the Romans conquered. They had their own culture and spiritual traditions and spiritual science before Christianity came. But when Christianity was used as a tool of conquest by the Romans, and then later by certain other groups as well, who adopted that as a tool and kind of continued the mantle, these cultures were devastated, right? Their traditions and knowledge were in large part damaged or wiped out, depending on the group. And crucially, the lineage itself was also demonized, right? Because these are acts of tribal warfare. These are acts of racial warfare, right? So because of that, if these people view Christianity as their culture, which unfortunately they do, that stops them from seeing what they were before Christianity. That stops them from truly seeing what they were like before Christianity. That probably also stops them with grappling with the reality of how Christianity came into their culture and the physiological and spiritual baggage of that, right? So because of that, they can't properly look at most of their history, right? And a lot of the distress, in fact, most of the distress going on within white culture today has its roots tens of thousands of years ago. It has its roots in things that happened way before Christianity even came about. And for white culture to fix itself, for white people to fix themselves and thereby become much less oppressive, but then even more crucially from their selfish standpoint, and I bring up their selfish standpoint not because I care about white people more than myself, but just because people are self-interested, so I have to talk to them, from their perspective, right? It's going to make them feel better if they can actually get to the root of what has gone wrong in their culture. But if you are under the misconception that Christian is a lineage, that Christian is a lineage specific to you and not your enemy, right? If you're under that misconception, you can't go through that healing process, right? And then you're going to continue to harm yourself. You're going to continue to harm others, right? So I think that's why this is such a problem. And it should be of concern that even among the white, lower tribe white revolutionary element like Marjorie Taylor Greene, they have such vast misconceptions, right? I think this is just as much of a problem for them, and then indirectly for the rest of us, as you could say, just for an example, Black people who think that, Islam is the Black man's true religion, right? If you think Islam is Black people's true religion, then you're going to run around, honoring the Prophet Muhammad when the Prophet Muhammad was selling your ancestors as slaves at Mecca, right? If you think that your ancestors were Muslim for their whole history, when they'd already gone through most of their history up to this point before Islam was even created, and Islam only came into their culture to destroy them, you're going to be very freaking confused. And with all due respect to my Black Muslim brothers and sisters, they're very confused. Okay. And that caused a lot of problems. It's a similar dynamic here. And of course, with Black people and Christianity, it's the same thing as Islam, right? But I'm just saying, I'm not just picking on the Muslims, right? But when when we look at these lower tribe whites, it's the same dynamic going on. And I would argue this is part of a broader identity confusion among white people in the world today, because you see the higher tribe whites, the Puritans and their allies, right? Since they're a minority, they figured out that they have to rule through deception. They have to win their race war, their internal white race war, through deception, right? Because I want to be clear about something else for people who don't understand. Just because there's a white race war, that doesn't mean that white people aren't collectively oppressing everyone else. They are, right? There are many race wars going on in the world today, right? So white people basically get together and say, okay, let's war on everyone else. Let's steal their stuff. Let's brutalize them. But then even among themselves, they fight to determine who gets most of the loot, right? So that's basically what's going on with them. I'm gonna try an analogy here. I'm feeling myself, despite my tired brain. It's kind of like if there was a pirate ship that went around, stealing from everyone else and destroying everyone else's ships. But then every time they're done looting everyone else, then they fight among themselves on the ship. That's what's going on with white people, right? And ironically, my laptop battery's low. Let me plug that in. But ironically, when these pirates fight among themselves, they hurt themselves so much that it causes them to go after everyone else with even more fury, right? So that's what's going on with white people in America and worldwide. Okay, that is what is going on with them. Now, to add now, as I was saying, this Christian nationalist confusion that you see displayed in Marjorie Taylor Greene and other people like her is part of a larger identity confusion among white people, because the higher tribe whites have propagated various myths for so long about lineage that has made the other white people they're victimizing either confused about their lineage or paradoxically not think lineage is a thing, right? And it's like, if you're in the middle of a race war and you don't know what your race is, you're in big trouble. If you're in the middle of a race war, worse yet, and you don't think race exists, you're basically dead. Right? So that's what's going on with a lot of these white people, and of course, even among black people, you see that it's even worse for us because we're in even worse position than any of these white people. But that's another subject, right? You know, if you know, you know. Sure, all you who are watching are smart enough to know. But anyway, right? Let me share my screen again and share something else that Marjorie Taylor Greene has said that shows how she is, you know, ideologically and historically confused. Okay, new conservative group would save Anglo-Saxon quote unquote tradition. This article is from last year, obviously April 2021. And basically what it's talking about is how Marjorie Taylor Greene and some other Republican congressmen tried to form I believe they called it a America First caucus. And they said one of the purposes of it was to champion Anglo-Saxon political tradition. And I'm going to read this a bit and then explain again why that's extremely confused behavior from them. So, hard right House Republicans on Friday were discussing forming an America First caucus, which one document described as championing quote unquote Anglo-Saxon political traditions, and warning that mass immigration was putting the quote unquote unique identity of the US at risk. The Associated Press obtained a copy of the paper, which was first reported by Punchbowl News, a news outlet covering Capitol Hill. The AP could not independently confirm the organization's origins or current status, but Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican of Florida, said he was joining and indicated that fellow conservative Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, there she is, a Republican from Georgia, was behind it. So Marjorie Taylor Greene started this American First Anglo-Saxon political traditions caucus, right? And also, I think, and again, this article, I've also put it in the live chat, and will also be in the description of the video, or in, I put it in the description or the comments. It'll either be in the description or I'll post it as a comment. I think I can put it in the description. But anyway, you'll be able to find it, right? Read the whole thing for yourself. But, and I think, I don't know if the quote is in here, but at some point, Marjorie Taylor Greene has called herself a proud Anglo-Saxon. And here's a quote from the founding document of the organization, right? America is a nation with a border, a cult, and a culture, strength, I don't know why they wrote it like that. It's a weird punctuation. America is a nation with a border and a culture strengthened by a common respect for uniquely Anglo-Saxon political tradition, the paper says. History has shown that societal trust and political unity are threatened when foreign citizens are important en masse into a country. Okay, and then there, obviously, that's part of the nativist element there. And this is another thing to add. I can stop sharing my screen. For those of you who don't already know, I obviously disagree with um, the nativist aspects of white nationalism. Because I think every lineage should be nationalist, right? Um, because you should, want to own and control some of your own resources, right? It's the group equivalent of having a house, right? But you can't make your house on someone else's land, right? Um, at least a house only for you, right? So America obviously is not originally white land, right? Native Americans lived here, and really before them, Africans, Black people, because we travel the whole world. If you look at it, Native Americans are actually just a mix of Black and Asian, right? And anyway, that's a different discussion, right? But the point is the people who got to this land first were not white, right? And there are also people who live here now that are not white, and they have just as much of a right to be here as white people. So I don't agree with them trying to restrict other people from coming and deporting people and doing other things to make the population whiter than it already is, right? So I don't agree with that, obviously. Um, in case there are any doubts about my positions on that. So that's another reason why the position is foolish. But that particular flaw of any sort of white nationalism has been at least the most common forms of white nationalism, the Christian nationalism. That has been stated many times. So that's not what I wanted to focus on as much. Right? But obviously, I'm in America right now. I don't want them to kick me all out. Right? I'm in Georgia. I'm in Marjorie Taylor Greene's home state. I don't want them to kick me all out. Right? But anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene attempted to form this basically Anglo-Saxon cultural and Anglo-Saxon nationalist organization. And eventually, she wasn't able to. I think someone behind the scenes, more powerful in the Republican Party, told her that it wasn't going to work, and she was forced to back out. She distanced herself from the organization in the end. The point is, she tried to form it, so that shows you where her head is at. But what's the problem with this? The problem with this is that Marjorie Taylor Greene is not an Anglo-Saxon, and neither are any of the lower tribe whites. And in fact, it their enemies, right, are the closest thing to an Anglo-Saxon that exists. What do I mean by that? Anglo-Saxon, like Scots Irish, is actually a misnomer. There has never been a group of white people that was made up of exclusively Angles and Saxons, right? Because the Angles and Saxons are just two white tribes that it's hard to say originated because all these white people migrated from elsewhere. But two white tribes who have been settled in Britain for quite a while. Let's say that, right? So they've never been like a unique, mutually exclusive group. However, they together have been part of a group along with other tribes that dominated Britain, really created England. They were among that group. That group gets referred to as the Anglo-Saxons often. And ironically, the Puritans, right, and their allies, right, the people who these lower tribe whites are fighting against were actually in that group of Anglo-Saxons. At least they're either they're either among that group that gets referred to as Anglo-Saxons or they're closely allied, right? So basically, they're way closer to an Anglo-Saxon than Marjorie Taylor Greene or anyone like her. So it's absolutely insane and asinine for her to be starting an Anglo-Saxon cultural group. That would be like me, an Igbo man, right, trying to advocate for my tribe within Nigeria by forming a Fulani cultural group, by forming a group meant to preserve, Fulani political unity and political traditions, and then calling myself a proud Fulani man. Makes no sense because I'm not Fulani, and they're actually the ones I'm opposing, right? Absolutely insane, right? So clearly, these Marjorie Taylor Greene and these other lower tribe whites have, fallen for the idea that like all white people, or at least all the ones that were there at the foundation of America, were Anglo-Saxon. Um, and I think because ironically, the real Anglo-Saxons, or the closest thing to them, have kind of distanced themselves from that term, then they're adopting that because they just want to be against them, but they don't realize how stupid they're being. Because Marjorie Taylor Greene, for those of you who have questions about her ancestry, she was born, raised in Georgia, and she was originally Catholic. She was born, raised Catholic. She converted from Catholicism to a strain of evangelical Christianity in about 2011, after she was horrified with a child abuse scandal in the Catholic Church, right? But the fact that she was born, raised Catholic, tells me she was not in Georgia, definitely not an Anglo-Saxon Puritan anything. If her politics didn't already tell you that, right? Because if she was Anglo-Saxon, she would have been from New England, probably, or not Anglo-Saxon, Puritan, higher tribe white. She would have either been from New England or maybe California, because I know a lot of them moved out there eventually. And she would have been raised either some sort of mainline Protestant or just non-religious, right? Those people are not Catholics in Georgia. And even I looked it up on, forgive me, I looked it up on her Wikipedia page, tried to look at her background. It doesn't say what her specific tribal ethnicity is, but those other things indicate there's no way she's Anglo-Saxon. Sorry, let me share my screen again. I also want to look up because actually Green is because her last name now is Green, but her original surname was Taylor. That's now her middle name. Because obviously, like a lot of women, she probably didn't have a middle name growing up, and then after she got married, her surname became her middle name. But I just want to look up the origin of the name Taylor and the surname. This is a side note. I also love looking at websites like behind the name, behind the surname, and just looking up the origin of different names. It tells you a lot about people, culture, the world. I do wish they had more African names in here, but heavy European bias, but it is what it is. But anyway, still shout out to the people behind the name, behind the surname. But anyway, let's look at Taylor, so the origin of it. See if that could tell us anything about her ancestry. So Taylor, so it's derived from Old French tailleur, meaning tailor, ultimately from Latin tailare, to cut, right? So okay, if the name is derived from French, the usage is English, so that would mean either she has French ancestry in her patrilineage, or she's Scots Irish, right, of some sort, because she's an English name. But then the Catholicism makes me think she's maybe just a quote unquote regular Irish person or something like that. That's what that makes me think. But anyway, if you look at the wealth of evidence, there's no way Marjorie Taylor Greene is, an Anglo-Saxon. So her and even Representative Matt Getz, that other guy, because again, I don't know exactly his tribe. The name Getz, it kind of sounds German. I actually had a school teacher with that name. That's ironic. Let's even look that up. Name Getz. And surname. I'm guessing German. It sounds kind of German to me. Um, English, American English. First of those who live behind a wall or moat. I mean, oh, I guess you related to gates. Okay, but let's look up where's Matt Getz from again. Uh, okay, he was born in Hollywood, Florida, right? Okay, but look at his mom. His mom's name Quarter Moose. That's not um that's not an Anglo-Saxon name. So then obviously from his politics as well, he's not you know he's not Puritan or anything like that. Right? He's not one of them way higher tribe whites. So him joining in on the Anglo-Saxon thing as well is also ridiculous, right? So anyway, the whole point I'm making behind this is that Marjorie Taylor Greene clearly is confused about her lineage and also her the culture of her lineage. Because of course, the reason so many she and white people like her hearing so strongly Christianity, it's not because they just love the teachings and the doctrines and they're so moral, right? Because you see how they behave. They're not super moral because they think that is their authentic culture. But unfortunately, that couldn't be further from the truth. While Christianity was invented by a white group, it was not. Most of them were not participating in it, and particularly the groups of white people that are fighting against the higher tribe whites in the U.S. With the exception of some Italians, because obviously the Romans were Italian, right? That history there is more complicated because they literally created Christianity, right? But everyone else, it was historically used as a weapon of destruction against their lineage and culture, right? And then on top of that, if you're in a lineage-based fight, you have to describe yourself and identify based on your lineage and be clear about what that is. It doesn't make sense to identify based off of an ideology or try and form a nationalism based off an ideology. It's not even exclusive to you. An ideology that even many members of your enemy group share. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? So basically, Marjorie Taylor Greene and a lot of other white people like her are confused about why they're being oppressed and the nature of their fight. They're also confused about their historical culture. And this is bad because it'll prevent them from actually fixing the problems within their culture, right? Because like the Christianity they love so much is demonized a lot of spiritual knowledge and spiritual practices um, that would help them actually heal their culture, right? Things like, getting in tune more with divine feminine energy. I'm going to go into this in later videos, but essentially, the main problem with white culture is that it's a hyper masculine culture, right? So they're unbalanced between masculine and feminine. Because of that, they started to rot from the inside, right? And that distress, the whole reason they made themselves like that in the first place was to facilitate their oppression of other people. But then in turn, it has made them more violent and oppressive because if someone starts to rot and hurt from the inside, they're going to lash out. That's what we see, right? So as long as they remain confused, and because of this confusion, they don't take a good look at their past. They don't heal from their trauma. They don't, cleanse their lineage from the atrocities they've committed. Because keep in mind, all the atrocities white people have committed throughout the millennia, that causes, spiritual pollution on their lineage, which then, in turn, will cause them to suffer, right? They need to cleanse from that, but they're never going to get there if they're stuck calling themselves Christian nationalists, because the Christianity won't even allow them to look, engage in the practices necessary to cleanse themselves. And then if they're not clear on what their lineage is, they won't even know which lineage to look at to even cleanse and heal and to understand how they got where they are, right? So it's a big problem. And then, if white people don't heal themselves, right, that's just going to make it a lot harder for the rest of us. Because to be clear, right, I myself am a Black nationalist, right? I think Black people have to, no matter what is going on with white people, we have to do our best, to gain control of our own reality. But, if they're wilding out, if they never get committed to healing themselves, even just for their own benefit before thinking about us, will make it way harder for us to succeed, because we're going to have to constantly deal with their BS and chaos. And, I know for those of you who watched the video I put up last week, I did outline 3 main topics I wanted to talk about on this channel, which is the impending 1861 Part 2 in the U.S., the looming, mass deletion of Blacks, and then also the way Black people vote in the U.S., right? What I'm talking about here is linked to all of that, but especially the looming 1861 Part 2, right? And some of the potential fallout from that, and the looming mass deletion of Blacks. If the white people in America don't get right the things I'm talking about, and instead the lower tribe whites keep going the Marjorie Taylor Greene route of Christian nationalism and calling themselves Anglo-Saxon, they're going to be so confused that in that confusion, they're just going to be running more further towards 1861 Part 2 instead of, giving themselves any chance of mitigating that. And as well, they're going to end up pursuing ends that will make the mass deletion of Black people in the U.S. even more likely. So, for those of us Black people living in America, if we don't see the white population making any positive changes in this regard, instead we see more Marjorie Taylor Greene talk, that's when we really have to, no matter what, we have to prepare to take countermeasures. But the more we see this kind of confusion, the more we really got to lean into those countermeasures, because that is a sign of trouble. So, yeah. Well, anyway, that's all I got to say. Thank you so much. Might stick around for a second in case anyone has questions, but if not, then I'll hop off, and you guys could leave me questions in the comments under the video, and I can, we could dialogue there. We could also dialogue in future live streams, and content around or comments on my future videos. So give it a moment to see who else is here. And it doesn't look as if anyone else has any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream and try and get to bed. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you for to those of you watching in the future. Again, please like and share this video. Please also subscribe so that you can see my live stream next week, Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, as well as future videos I have coming out on this channel. And please check out the other channels, the other networks on my media company, right? Because I have one media company, OZ, right? Especially check out Chimoge's comments, because I go live there every Saturday, 7 p.m. I went live yesterday, talked about Brittany Griner. Please check that out. Also the Nature Channel, Walma, check that out. The links to all of these I can put in the description. But just letting you all know, please check all that out. Please subscribe so you can see more of my content. And check me out on other platforms as well, because I'm not just on YouTube. Even this video eventually is going to go out on Facebook, Odyssey, Instagram, active on Twitter. So please check me out on all those other platforms. So yeah, and thank you very much, and have a good night.